Hello and welcome into the Fog.net podcast. My name is Michael Swain, the Kansas beat writer for 24/7 Sports. It's a Sunday in football season, which means we are joined by Kevin Flaherty. We got a lot to break down. Kansas football goes to Orlando, beats UCF 27-20 in what was a very interesting game with plenty of ups and downs, I think you could say, Kevin. We're going to do a little different this time. Usually we talk about the game and then at the end we get the big picture stuff. But Kevin, let's get into this because I think the big picture of this game is so interesting.
Yeah.
And the way you want to approach it, it tells you, I think, first of all, how you view this team. Also, just generally, like, what sort of enjoyment you're going to get out of this season. And I want to hear your opinion first, though. Well, let's start here, Kevin. So what's the way you're thinking about this win for KU? Because I do think there are definitely some different ways you can go with it.
Yeah, I'm definitely somebody who's a lot more forgiving of an ugly win than a lot of people are. There are a lot of people who get down on when you have a game like that and you kind of pull it out by the skin of your teeth and they're sitting there and saying, oh my gosh, we should have lost the game, blah, blah, we could have lost the game. To me, just get the job done. Like when you look at the schedule page 5 years from now, trying to remember like, hey, the 2025 Jayhawks, you're not necessarily going to remember the way that it happened. You're going to remember if it was a win or a loss. And so to me, that was the big part. Now, if you want to look at it and say, hey, did the same issues pop up? Yeah, like they did. And in some areas where it made you wonder if Kansas was going to win the game and where you wondered, hey, if this is a team that's not UCF, that's better equipped to attack some of Kansas's things, will this continue to be a problem? Yeah, it might continue to be a problem. And so from that standpoint, sure, I definitely get the negative sort of tint with it. But at the same time, I think especially after you go down 14-0 the way that you did, it stopped being a beauty contest win and became a let's just find a way to get out of here with that tally in the right column.
Exactly. And so I think if you want to say, hey, there's the stuff I'm concerned about with the performance. Totally on the same page as you. I agree, right? Some of the same issues keep popping up.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, winning on the road in the Big 12 is hard.
Yeah.
And that's something that can't be overlooked, right? The fact that going on the road in conference play, and granted, UCF is not that great. They're in their first year under Scott Frost. Like, it's a team that's rebuilding. But at the end of the day, KU's a long way from home.
Yeah.
Playing at night, it's raining. It's one of those things where you can look at history for KU, and winning on the road in the Big 12 is just hard, right? Last year, BYU on the road, that was it was not a pretty performance for KU, right? The offense really struggled. The defense, it bent, but it didn't break.
Yeah.
You can go back to 2023. Okay, beating Cincinnati, that was a team that was checked out on Satterfield's first year, end of the year. But a couple weeks prior, it's Iowa State. And I think that was actually maybe one of the better road performances we've seen under Lance Leipold. And that was still a one-score game for Kansas. And then you go back to 2022 in West Virginia. But like, winning on the road in the Big 12 has not been something that Kansas has done regularly. Even under Lance Leipold, it's been much more regular than it was. But it's still something that I think is deserves credit. And the fact that the way that the game went, where KU is down early, down 14-0, man, felt like 2022 again. Or was it? Yeah, it was 22 when they kept getting down 14-0 in those.
The game didn't start until they got down 14.
Yeah, I turned to sit next to Henry from the LJ World, and I literally said, man, this is just 2022 vibes all over again. But that's the thing, Kevin. I think on the one hand, you can talk about, hey, there are aspects of this performance that are still concerning that you have, that you're wondering about. And you can also say, man, going on the road and winning the Big 12 is hard. And that can't be overlooked. And the fact that this win, I think, for KU opens the door for a lot for the rest of the season, where if this is a performance, Kevin, where they go down 14-0, they lose the game in the end, say it's 27-20 the other way.
Yeah.
You're looking at the schedule and you're wondering, okay, how is KU getting to a bowl game? You can't go on the road and beat a UCF team that you definitely should have beaten. And all of a sudden, things look very different for you for the rest of the season. And now the win, I think, flips it, where Okay, Tech, hard game.
Yep.
But in terms of what KU showed in battling back and when you do have a full complement of linebackers, aka you have Bengali, the defense looks a little better. And
Yep.
so you just look at this game and again, we'll get into the performance, but it's one of those situations where I just think you can't overlook the fact that winning on the road in the Big 12 is hard. And KU did it. And so that deserves credit in of itself, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And when you find a way to win when you're not at your best, we've talked about it. I hate that so many Kansas things like lead back to basketball, but we always talk about like Bill Self loves nothing more than when his team doesn't play well and finds a way to win anyway. The grit that shows, all of those things are worth more to him than, hey, we made a lot of shots and we beat somebody. Of course, you're going to look good when you're making shots. And this was sort of the football equivalent of that, right? You especially think about the way the offense has previously operated in terms of being super explosive, all these giant, long touchdown plays. And in this one, Swain, they had to grind out possessions and they had to grind out touchdown drives. And so to me, there was maybe even more value in proving that they could do that on a night where, hey, you didn't just hit Emmanuel Henderson for 90 yards than maybe there is on days when things are going a lot easier offensively and defensively.
Exactly. And you look at the scoring plays, right? And it's a bunch of LaShawn Williams here. We can run through it. LaShawn Williams, 1 yard touchdown run. LaShawn Williams, 4 yard run. Like it's just one of those where you're like, okay. And then LaShawn Williams at the end of the game, 2 yard run.
Yeah.
Like it's very different than you look at like the Cincinnati game where it was just explosive plays, 15+ yard touchdown plays. And in this one, you're right. There was an element of grinding it out. And there was an element too where you look in the fourth quarter and KU's backed up a couple times.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those where sometimes the advantage that you would say KU would have, which is KU's offense against Cincinnati's defense. To some degree, KU ended up getting kind of handcuffed by the way that the field position slanting went and where KU was starting drives. And you can look at some of the stuff in the first half and the way the defense came out at lackadaisical. So I just think, Kevin, you're right. Like it is the classic, you got to win these types of games.
Yeah.
Because again, if you don't, it opens up a whole different conversation about where is this team going, where's the season going, and the fact that they showed the grit again, night, road game, rainy. It's not a raucous crowd, Kevin. It was kind of a bummer to see it where it was probably 2/3 full.
It's so funny you say that because I don't know if you've watched the broadcast of the game yet, but on the broadcast there was repeated like UCF student section is changing this game type of vibe to it. So I'm very interested because I watched it at home. Swain, you were there, and so very different sort of way of framing that from you who were there versus what those of us who watched it at home kind of got a chance to see.
Are you being serious right now?
Yeah.
Was the broadcast saying that?
Serious, yeah. Oh, yeah, another false start. That's the UCF student section in action, and yes, it was.
Kevin, the student section
It was very much the bounce house is carrying this right now type of vibe for sure.
That's so funny. That's so funny. All right. Well, here, let's get into this now, Kevin, because my word, we have some stuff to talk about. Let's start on defense, man.
Yeah.
Because it was about as ugly as, as ugly as it could be. Missed tackles, missed assignments. What are the core issues with KU's defense that you worry about? It's some of the coverage stuff. It's at times, can KU just make the tackles necessary? And it's in the games when KU can't get pushed up front that all of a sudden you see things kind of open up for other teams and you wrap all that into one. And that is kind of the first half where, Cincinnati averages 10 yards a carry in the first half. It was just one of those where it was a statistical beatdown on KU's defense. And it was interesting listening to some of the players talk post game because Trey Lathan and Jalen Dye both brought up the fact that they felt like, UCF was going after the boundary for KU, which is where John Kamara was playing because obviously Bengali was out with the targeting. And I can't remember if it was Trey or Jalen, I think it was Trey, made a comment, hey, well, if you got a young guy there, they're going to challenge him. And I thought you saw that from the get-go. You know, you can look at the touchdown run for Montgomery, right, the 29-yard run, and John's just one gap over, and there's a huge hole where I think it's he and Taylor Davis are in basically looking at the same gap. And, you know, if John is where you'd likely think he should be, you know, it's probably a different play. Maybe they go on and score anyway. But I think that was something early in the game you saw UCF just say, all right, you guys have a redshirt freshman who is in his second career start, really his first career start where he has to play, because Missouri, John started, but Bengali went in and played a lot. And they went after him, and they had success, and they were able to get to the edge and get in space. And when you have to see guys tackle one-on-one, that's always going to be hard for a defensive back to do. And I just think UCF came out with a good game plan and really punched KU in the mouth.
I love the way you put it in your article on the Pro Football Focus grades, where you talked about when Bengali Kamara came in, the fact that they were playing off their front foot, basically. Because I thought watching John, and you know, this isn't a knock on it, the game was really fast for John, and I think
it's his
that
first start,
that stood out. And so, you know, John was reading and reacting. You know, he was reacting to what was going on. Bengali was proactive, right? And so I think you saw a lot of difference there where Bengali was maybe, or where John was maybe getting sucked into some places where he shouldn't have been, but also just, hey, this thing is moving really fast. It's really physical right now. And you know, I'm still trying to figure out which way is right and which way is left, versus when Bengali came in playing off of the front foot. And we'll get to the second half here in a little bit, I'm sure, but it was just that was a major part of it. And that wasn't all of it. I do think Kansas came out a little flat in general. And I think when you look at the defensive tackles, I thought they played better in the second half. I thought the edges were set better, even beyond Bengali, in the second half. And so I thought all of it kind of got better in the second half. But the most obvious part, I thought, was you really noticed the game was moving really, really fast for John. And when you added the fact that, hey, the defense is playing kind of flat right now, it was a bad formula and a big part of the reason they didn't just go down 14-0, but continued to give up scoring drives for the rest of the half.
Yeah, and the thing that concerned me not the most, obviously, missing tackles and having running backs, you know, just make guys like how many hurdles did Montgomery have? Like, I don't remember exactly. I still have to go back and rewatch the game. But it's one of those where it looks like, off the top of my head, I can remember 3 times where he tried to hurdle guys. And it's like, that's a running back that's playing with FU confidence. That, like, I know I have you. And that was concerning. But then also the fact that, you know, Taven Jackson on the first drive is making some nice throws. Guys are wide open. That was also the fact that you're like, man, the coverage stuff that you saw against Cincinnati, that is concerning. Well, that's still there. But now all of a sudden, the thing that KU generally had been halfway decent at, which is stopping the run, well, all of a sudden, you know, that's an issue now. And that's why it was very much like, oh boy, panic stations, because you can't all of a sudden be having Taven Jackson throw the ball around, you know, like he's Sorsby, because he's not. And that was super concerning. And I think it was Trey Lathan too that said, you know, KU just they came out flat. And it's one of those, you can see why that would happen, right? Texas Tech next weekend. It's a road night game at a team you're favored against. It's not a raucous atmosphere. You know, you put all that together, you see why the
quarterbacks are injured. They're coming off of losing by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, you can see why KU would think, hey, we're good. You can't think like that, though, in the Big 12, you know, especially. But that was it, Kevin. Like, the first 2 drives, you're just like, okay, all the issues KU has are being exposed. And that's a huge concern for the rest of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whatever people think of Lance Leipold, his teams are really physical. Kansas doesn't often just get moved around, doesn't often get blown off the ball on both sides. I mean, over the last like 2 or 3 years, you can count games where Kansas didn't make the play when it needed to, right? Or hey, lost this close game because of this. There aren't a whole lot of games in there where you look up at the end of the game and you're like, the other team was just tougher, more
Mm.
physical. And I thought early on in this one, UCF was absolutely the more physical team. And I think that you pair that with the fact that, like you said, you had a younger guy in there, all of the different things that went along with that. It was kind of a formula for disaster. And, kind of switching the offense for a minute, that's what made that drive to cut it to 14-7 one of the most important drives of the season to date. I feel like, when you look at, if you don't respond here with the way the defense is playing, with the way everything is going, then you're really putting yourself behind the eight ball. As it is, the offense has the long drive. You go down, cut it, what was 9 plays, 75 yards, I think, and you cut it to 14-7.
Mhm.
It was one of the biggest and best drives that Kansas has had this season, I think.
Yes. And you saying that, Kevin, made me think about this. KU's gotten some really, really explosive plays when it has to have it.
Yep.
Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking, okay, Missouri, there's the play where KU has, I believe, the series events when Jalen had the fumble that they recovered.
Yep.
And then Jalen finds Levi Wentz for like 50 yards. That was a huge play that set up a scoring drive. Maybe I'm getting my events wrong, but regardless, it was a 50-yard completion, right, to Levi. All of a sudden, that's a game-changing play. I think you can look at West Virginia, the kick return from Emmanuel Henderson, giving KU that 17-0 swing in the middle eight. That's huge.
Yep.
You can look against Cincinnati, right? The second touchdown for Henderson, that's coming at a huge point. And then on this drive, that's when Bowden Gruen has his 46-yard catch. And it just seems like KU's ability to dial up some of those explosive plays, and obviously Emmanuel Henderson kickoff return is not something you can just dial up. If you could, you dial it up every time, right? But KU is getting some of these really explosive plays in some really big moments. And the fact that KU got that on this drive was definitely one of those where it was like, okay, KU's going to be in this. Like this was the drive when you were like, okay, KU's offense has settled down. They've kind of figured some stuff out. Still can't really run the ball, but they're moving the ball at least. And that definitely was like a right the ship type of drive. And then obviously, UCF goes and has the field goal attempt, I want to say. Yeah, it was a field goal attempt next. But you can see things, I've got the EPA chart up here. Things kind of peaked for UCF around play 20, which if I go look at the drive chart, that was at the end of that second touchdown drive. Then they have the field goal drive after that. So KU's defense, not great in the first half, but they started to get some of those stops at the end of the first half where if all of a sudden those are touchdown drives, it's a much different conversation because now you're talking about 28 points in the first half instead of it being 20.
Yeah, and I went over to some friends' houses before the game and was getting asked, "Hey, how do you think this game is going to play out?" And one of the reasons I was confident in Kansas winning this game was I was just sort of like, I'm not sure that UCF is going to be able to test Kansas's defense in the same way that Cincinnati could. I'm not saying they aren't going to hit on a big pass play here and there, but I didn't think they would be able to consistently generate explosives in the passing game the way that Cincinnati was going to. And you kind of saw the Cincinnati or the UCF offense start to bog down just a little bit in some key moments. And then in the second half, obviously, when Kansas took the run game away, Cincinnati's offense pretty much went, or UCF's offense pretty much went in the tank.
Yeah, when Fancher came out, I think I had posted in the VIP game thread, I was just like, make the quarterback beat you. Like that's got to be the goal of the second half, right? You got to make the quarterback beat you. And that's what KU did. And so I want to pull up some interesting numbers here, Kevin, just shows you how much of a beatdown it was in the second half for KU defensively. So this right here is some of the numbers at halftime. So you can look at UCF's success rate, 88th percentile, EPA per rush, 99th percentile. Okay. Then you can look at the end of the game, UCF success rate, 28th percentile. Now, this is for the whole game, not just the second half. EPA per rush, 50th percentile. So KU really did a great job of stopping the run. And in doing so, then all of a sudden, you're basically forcing a quarterback that's not very good and that hasn't really played to beat you. And granted, Fancher had the good scramble. Like there were a couple good plays that he made, but you were daring him to beat you and he couldn't. And that was just such a huge, huge thing for KU. And man, having Bengali Kamara is so important for KU's defense. And I didn't notice it as much maybe again in Cincinnati, where you're like, man, you really wish KU had Bengali out there. But I felt it in this game, where as soon as he was out there, you noticed him. The first play of the second half, he is getting upfield, setting the edge, forcing Montgomery back, and it's a 3-yard gain. In the first half, Montgomery's getting to the sideline, making a guy miss, and he's going for 15, 20 yards. It's just positionally, his athleticism allows him to be in a spot. His experience allows him to get to spots because he knows where to be, because he's been around the block. And just as soon as he got on the field, you felt the difference for KU's defense.
Yeah, for sure. UCF had -1 yards total in the third quarter.
Pretty crazy.
And so when you look at that, and then here's some of the overall sort of second half stats, and you've got some of them up there. The second half, UCF averaged 1.6 yards per carry on 23 carries. They were 1 for 9 on third downs, 1 for 3 on fourth downs, and they had 3 yards per play. And so when you look at that, there was so big of a difference. And I think the main thing you attribute it to is Bengali Kamara. That's not the only thing. Like I said, I do think, Justice Finkley had a good second half. The defensive line in general was much better in the second half. The second level guys were getting to where they needed to be, and Kansas tackled better in the second half. I think all of those things are factors, but a big part of what Bengali Kamara was doing was he was getting into the backfield where Montgomery was having to make a move and get horizontal rather than getting downhill. And when that happens, there were guys there to clean it up. There were guys there to either force, stops, short gains, and or tackles for loss. And UCF just never really was able to recover offensively from that.
No, and look, man, you also give some credit to some of the players on the back end.
Sure.
He was down to the bare bones in the secondary. Jalen Todd from the get-go is playing nickel all game. And that's your best cornerback on the outside, right? Jalen Todd has been challenged very little. It's very reminiscent of, I'm not saying he's Kobe, but like what you saw at times with Kobe, where teams were just like, no, we're not going to his side.
Yeah.
I don't have the season target numbers ahead of me, but I bet you there's a good difference between the kind of targets per game, DJ Graham, Austin Alexander, drop off, than what Jalen Todd's is. So all of a sudden, KU has to move Jalen Todd inside. They've got DJ and Austin playing on the outside. Jaleel Hurley comes off the bench, gives you a nice pass breakup in the first half. At safety, Kevin, they were not far away from having like Damani Maxon play, a redshirt freshman, because Devin Dye hurts his hamstring on the play. And man, if it hadn't started raining 2 seconds before that, he catches that ball.
I think it also looked like the hamstring popped like while he was about to pick it too. Yeah. So I think that was, even with the rain, he might have picked it if it hadn't picked like the worst possible moment for that injury to kind of pop right there.
Yeah. And so Mason Ellis isn't even in Orlando. He's at home in rehabbing. Taylor Davis goes out. He's got a boot on his right foot in the second half. So all of a sudden it's Jalen Dye, and Lyric Rawls has to play every snap in the second half. Now, granted, there weren't a lot of snaps in the second half for the defense, but man, those guys were grinding. And I think they deserve, like, of course, right, Bengali, some of the defensive linemen, right, are going to get a lot of the credit because they are the ones that were around line of scrimmage making the plays. But still, some of those guys on the back end, I think, deserve some credit because they made some big plays. And like Austin Alexander, there's no better example of like a guy making some freshman mistakes, right? There's some cushion on some throws that maybe there shouldn't be. We'll maybe get some answers on that this week. But at the end of the game, when you need a pass breakup to stop a touchdown, Austin makes the play. And so again, just reiterating like the fact that those guys on the back end, I think, do deserve some credit for their piece in all of this in the second half.
Yeah, and you have the red zone struggles and everything, and the defense basically creates a touchdown too, where you have the die sack that Lathan basically runs, recovers and almost scores himself. And so when you look at that back end, and the amazing thing about it, Swain, is it's kind of funny. We talked so much about how deep the safety room is, how versatile it is, right? Like all those guys are so different from each other. Mason Ellis's skill set is different than Taylor Davis's, is different than Lyric Rawls's. When you have all these injuries, guys are being asked to do stuff that is not necessarily as much in their wheelhouse. You know, one of the big runs at the end of the first half, it was the second run that basically helped set up the field goal. Lyric Rawls was playing like a pretty deep safety on that thing and had to come running up. He took a bad angle, and the running back wound up having a big play. Lyric Rawls as a deep safety, that's not his strength. You put him in the box, he may be an all Big 12 safety. He's having a terrific year when he's around the line of scrimmage and when he's allowed to do what really makes him good. But when you look at the dies, when you look at Lyric Rawls at this point, you can't pick and choose where you're putting those guys right now because you just don't have other guys. And so it's not even necessarily like they're being asked to play to their strengths. They're being asked, hey, you got to do the whole gamut because we just don't have other safeties.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think we talked about it maybe a couple weeks ago about how the defensive line, the way they've found ways to put guys in positions where they're playing with their strengths. Well, all of a sudden, you got to change that when injuries impact it. And it's a great point about Lyric, especially because I think, Cincinnati, not his best game in coverage, but when he is running downhill and being able to make plays, within kind of 5 yards line of scrimmage, right? He's looked pretty good. Now, offensively, Kevin, this was a really interesting half for KU. And we mentioned a little bit off the top about how some of the dynamics at play really impacted, but here's how the second half went for KU in terms of drives. So there's the 10-play, 59-yard drive, ends in a field goal, 6-play, 46-yard drive, field goal, and then there's the short touchdown off of that fumble that Trey Lathan recovered. And then here's when it gets interesting. So Kansas starts at its 11-yard line. 4 plays, 14 yards, punt. Kansas at the 1-yard line, punt, 3 plays, 5 yards. Kansas at the 1-yard line, 3 plays, 8 yards, punt. Let's wait and get into the goal line stuff or the revert, where they're backed up. But this was a game where early in the second half, some of those little errors that typically KU's not made. Typically, KU's not a procedure penalty team or having things that are controllable slow down the offense at some of those high leverage moments. Typically, that's not been where KU has struggled. But that really showed up in the second half, and those were some big time backbreakers because KU's defense, obviously, that time is doing its job, right?
Yep.
And KU's having to settle for some of these field goals. And that was just something that it felt like, man, this could be a missed opportunity here if UCF does figure some things out offensively.
Yeah, you're kind of drumming your fingers a little bit, right? Because the defense is finally getting stops. And you're like, now's when you take control of the game. And the offense didn't really ever take control of the game. You get a field goal to cut it to 3. Then you get another field goal. And it's kind of like, man, is the offense gonna, if you got 2 touchdowns there, you're sitting pretty, and instead you're in a really close game. Then the defense basically gives you a touchdown to where it's 27-20, and yet your offense isn't able to give you that breathing room to get you that extra score where you have a little bit better situation. And so, yeah, the offense in the second half in particular, in the first half, you had 2 incredibly clutch long drives that they needed to have. And they moved the ball early in the second half, but couldn't finish those things. And so, yeah, the offense in the second half really kind of struggled to put the bow on this game that maybe should have been put on the game at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And going through it here. So on the first drive, right, 3rd and 3, short for KU at the 10-yard line, false start on Enrique Cruz. I watched that back. I don't remember thinking that it was super egregious. They must have seen something. Do you remember that one, Kevin? Because
I didn't think it was a huge jump either, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, okay. Then the second one, right? This is the one where Cam Pickett has the really athletic catch. Man, that was such a great catch for him. Oh my gosh. And then KU has incompletion, and then the kick.
The incompletion to Emmanuel Henderson. Oh man, that was so close to being just a tremendous play. And it was funny because on the broadcast, they're like, oh, Jalen laid it out too far. I thought Jalen put it the only place he could put it because the coverage was terrific. And it would have been a tough completion because the corner was right there, but he put it sort of in the one place that it wasn't at risk, and yet Henderson could try and make a play, and he almost made that play.
He was close. He was close. So that's what leads to that. All right. So now let's get into some of this. And so when KU's backed up, and this is just me as someone who is a San Francisco 49ers fan who watched the Niners be in this exact same spot on Thursday night and just hating the way that it played out, where the Niners were on like the 1 yard line and they did a sneak on first down. And then basically at that point, they committed that they were going to punt the ball, go 3 and out. And to me, it felt very similar with the way that KU approached some of this offensively. Totally understand risk mitigation, right? Totally understand that that is where you're at in the game, where it's 27-20. The last thing you need is a safety that's 2 points. You punt the ball away. All of a sudden, UCF's got some momentum in their own heads. Who knows where that goes. I totally understand that. But at the same time, I just personally feel like there should have been more aggressiveness there.
Yeah.
And it felt like KU kind of committed and allowed it to happen, where it's kind of like, we're kind of just going to end up punting here.
There's one thing that I hate more than the QB sneak on first down from the goal line, and that's the goal line fade in like a one-off.
Oh,
situation. I hate that play. But after that, the thing that I hate is the first down QB sneak, right? Because you're hoping to get 2 yards, and then you're still going to be throwing from the end zone. So why not throw from the end zone on first down, give yourself a chance to get out to the 7? Like, I'm not saying – Bobby Bowden used to say one of us is fixing to score, and it was a max protect, throw a shot play, and they worked in practice, Swain, on if you don't catch it, like tackle the guy and it's a punt. But if you get pass interference or you catch the ball, we're cooking. I don't necessarily that's maybe a little too aggressive, but why not just run like a quick stick route or something to get yourself 6 yards and get out of that situation, set up a more makeable situation? I hate that QB sneak from the 1 because I don't feel like it really actually gets you that much, and you give away the down.
Yeah, exactly. You're still like, regardless of what happens there, you're still backed up.
Yeah.
And so on the first occasion, right, KU does the sneak with Jalen up the middle, 2 yards, and then they do try and pass it. Yep. That's when Jalen gets pressured, and I think he tried to hit Carson Brune over the middle. All right, that didn't work. But then KU goes run on third down. That's just admitting we're just giving Finn Lappin a little bit of room here.
Sure.
To be fair, Finn Lappin, good day for him. Then after that, KU gets back. This is after the 4th down stop. Okay. This was the one that for me was just like, oh, brother, like, could you throw the ball? But KU sneak, LeSean, 4-yard run. And this is the Jalen Daniels run. And I think Leipold said to us after the game, or maybe it was on the radio, that he felt like KU was barely a missed block away from it working and Jalen getting the first down. I admittedly have not seen the replay, so I'm not going to give you a strong take here. It's just one of those where you're running your quarterback on 3rd and 4. I don't hate it. I think for me, my thing is more 2nd down. Maybe you try something. But what do you think on the Jalen run there?
Yeah, I didn't like it, and I tweeted that in real time. One of the things that you're a 49ers guy, I'm a Chiefs guy, being from Kansas City. And one of the things that drives me nuts sometimes is when the Chiefs will have a possession, right? You get to 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, and you take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands to try and get a conversion, right? Like, Patrick Mahomes is your $500 million man. You built the team around him. Like, if you're going to convert, I trust him to get the conversion, put it in his hands, and let him throw for it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying Jalen Daniels is Patrick Mahomes, but he is a top 10 quarterback in college football from an efficiency standpoint, from a Pro Football Focus grade standpoint. He's the best player on your team at this point. Put the ball in his hands and trust that he is going to put you in a good situation. The other thing, Swain, that I think is they haven't had as much success with quarterback designed runs this year. And I think when you drop Jalen back in a more traditional pass, you also give him the chance to beat the defense on a scramble where I think he's been incredibly effective. And so I like the idea of throwing on second down or even third down. And I know some people said run on second down so they have to waste another timeout. Look, at that time, I get that, but at that time period, there was so much time left that the first down was more important than wasting the timeout. And you saw that because UCF used all three timeouts, still got the ball, still had plenty of time to move the ball down the field. The clock wasn't an obstacle. And so to me, it was more important to try and get the first down than it was to, relieve UCF of one of its timeouts right there.
I agree, Kevin. So yeah, it's one of those where, maybe a little bit of aggressiveness, but again, the whole risk mitigation thing, I do get it. But granted, you're opening yourself up there, right?
Yeah.
You are leaving yourself open to all of a sudden UCF figuring it out. Now, granted, it's Scott Frost in a one-score game, so the chances of that are slim, but still, it's the principle of it, and it's weighing the risk mitigation versus the aggressive approach that could it backfire and cost you several seconds in this game. Sure, but wouldn't you rather have the chance to just end the game itself on the front end? So it's just one of those where like you can I understand it, man. If we were to have Leipold here with us, like he could explain it, and you could say, hey, I totally understand your reasoning, totally get it. You and I probably just view the approach to football in some of these situations differently, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Right. I think also understanding who the head coach is and what he wants to do and what he leans towards, that's one thing. And then you can put your opinion in a different box in this type of situation.
Sure. Yeah, and Lance Leipold's won a lot of games by doing this. He's won championships by doing this. And, we've talked about before, I hate to always bring up the Oklahoma game, but they won the Oklahoma game, when their defense got a big stop after the game looked like it was over. You punt it back and you go down and win the game. And so there have been games he's won at Kansas by being conservative. Last year against BYU, the defense got the stop at the end. And so, I get this is sort of Lance Leipold's MO. Personally, I think you got a quarterback like Jalen who's having the year that who's having the game that he was having, Swain. One of the things that I wanted to mention, because I feel like we almost kind of skipped over it here, Jalen Daniels quietly had a really nice game. And one of the things that he did not put the football at risk. There was no fumble. The announcers kind of got on him on the one where he threw it, where he was kind of hit. But I do think that he kind of aimed it into an area where there's nobody around, really. In order for Kansas to win this game, they needed to be turnover free, I feel like. And UCF's one turnover led to a Kansas touchdown, and that was the difference in the game. But Jalen, not only did he not have any turnovers in this game, Swain, he was accurate and he didn't put the ball at risk for a turnover either.
Exactly. And you mentioned it, right? Jalen right now is a top 10 quarterback on PFF. That's total offense grade. So theoretically, like some of your dual threat guys are going to maybe be slightly more favored in that than maybe some of your more traditional kind of pocket passers.
Sure.
But regardless, that part doesn't matter. I think even if you were to change it to passing grade, I was messing around with it. I think he's still top 20, top 15.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
He goes from being like number 8 to like number 14 or so. It's something like that, where it's in the teens, I want to say. Point being, Jalen's playing at an incredibly high level. It doesn't matter that he didn't get a touchdown throw this week. And honestly, it's surprising, not surprising, but for KU that it had its red zone issues, particularly running the ball, the fact that the touchdowns all came on the ground is kind of, just interesting to me.
Le'Shawn, by the way, had what? How many touchdowns did he have in his Iowa career?
3 rushing touchdowns in his 300 something carries at Iowa, and he had 3 touchdowns in his 12 carries.
I know you
He
covered
loved it.
Iowa State, but my God, Iowa, where offense goes to die, right?
It's just awful. And it was so funny hearing, Le'Shawn talk about a post game where he's like, man, I've never done that before, but it was great. You're like, yep, scoring touchdowns is fun. So yeah, Kevin, it's one of those where, again, KU does enough to win. You love what you're seeing from Jalen Daniels. You still are a little concerned with the third down stuff for KU. Explosive runs not really showing up too much, but again, like now you're kind of grasping at straws because KU is still, not this game, 27 points versus the 30 plus in every other game, but KU's putting up the points. And defensively, like you still see some of the good stuff from the defensive line in this game. But KU just has to play with that same intensity that they play with in the second half, because when those guys are playing with effort, like they get upfield, they make plays. It's when stuff is lackadaisical, that's when teams are able to run the ball, because all of a sudden gaps are there, and it's all comes down to a one-on-one tackling game, and that's always going to favor the offensive team. So, for KU though, it's a good win. But now it's on to Texas Tech, Kevin. And so, up next, like the spread for Tech, I think right now is at 14.5. I can pull this up real quick. It's at 14 as we record this on Sunday afternoon. So look, it's going to be a tough game. It's the second largest spread KU's faced since the start of the 2023 season. 15 points at Texas in 2023, 10 points at Kansas State last year. KU went 0-2 in both of those games. KU's 2-10 as a double-digit road dog under Lance Leipold.
Yeah, well, and Texas Tech, it's pretty well earned at this point too. And I think you and I think we see the value in Pro Football Focus grades. We aren't necessarily beholden to them, but they're a nice tool to help with evaluation. The Big 12 has 6 players with grades of 90 plus on Pro Football Focus. Do you know how many Texas Tech has of those 6?
What was the first number again? How many total in the Big 12?
There were 6 total in the Big 12.
5?
They have 3. They have half of them.
That's good. I was probably
there are 15 guys in the Big 12 with grades of 85 plus.
15.
15.
Okay, now I'll be aggressive again. 9?
No, it's actually less for the next 2. So it's 6 of 15. So still better than a third of the guys rated 85 plus. And then 80 plus for me, those are the guys that you consider to be like all Big 12 players, right? Like 80 plus for me is like, that's generally speaking, you're having an all conference type season. There are 39 of those in the Big 12.
13?
10. So you weren't far off. So yeah, they had better than a fourth of the 80 plus guys, better than a third of the 85 plus guys, and they have half of the 90 plus guys. And when you consider you got a league with 16 teams in there, that's pretty absurd, honestly.
So here's something, as you're saying that, I pulled up the team overall grade for PFF.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Number 1 in the country in terms of overall team PFF grade, Indiana is number 1.
Okay.
And that's interesting too, because if you look at SP Plus, Indiana is the number 1 team.
Yeah.
If you strip out preseason expectation stuff, so only what you've seen so far this year, Indiana is number 1. Tech, I think, is number 3 or 4. Tech is number 2. And so that's overall. And then, like, if you want to look at offense, Texas Tech is number 5. If you want to look at overall defense, Texas Tech is number 1. So number 5 offense, number 1 defense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty crazy how good they are. And what's funny is, what do you think Texas Tech's weak spot is? Like, just, I think most people would say, hey, you've got an incredible roster, but your quarterback is solid-ish in Baron Morton.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, that not that like, hey, you're going to lose games because of Baron Morton, but just sort of you've got this unbelievable roster, and then Baron Morton has a grade over 80 this year, 1, and 2, he may not be their best quarterback, Swain. Like when
Yeah,
Will Hampton came in against Utah, he destroyed Utah. There was a little while there when he had enough qualifying snaps that Will Hammond was the number one quarterback in the country. He doesn't have enough qualifying snaps right now, but it's still one of those things where it's just like the depth on this team is absurd. So the best defensive tackle that KU's got from Pro Football Focus standpoint is Tommy Dunn. Tommy
is it
Dunn,
really?
yeah, it is. Like 72, I want to say. Tommy Dunn's grade is a little bit below Texas Tech's fourth best defensive tackle.
Oh wow, that's pretty good.
So yeah, they didn't just build a really good team. They built a really, really ridiculously deep team. They have 3 defensive tackles with grades above 80 right now. 2 defensive ends with grades above 90. And their linebacker, Jacob Rodriguez, is also above 90.
Oh my god! Wow. All right. Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
KU is going to be trying to run into this week, and it's not like the secondary has been bad. I mean, Tech's defense, like you said, has been number 1 in the country, but that's just sort of that's what Kansas is facing this week.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be. I'm interested to see how KU does in
Yeah,
terms of like what sort of schematic stuff are they gonna draw up. I think
yeah,
Tech's. Yeah, here it is. Tech's run game is the weakness offensively.
yeah,
But still, it's one of those you look at who they have at skill positions, and Morton, I think, is still a good player. Yeah, defensively, how is KU going to scheme this game up? Because theoretically, this should be like what Oklahoma was in like 2023, where it's like
yeah.
pull out all the stops to try and really make it a different type of game. And obviously, Tech's going to go look at Missouri and see what Missouri did to keep KU from getting super creative and maybe some of the stuff. So it's going to be a big game for KU, and one that KU does not, as of late, does not get blown out.
Yep.
So if you made me say right now, hey, is this going to be a 10-point or less type of game? I'd say yes, just because that's what the games KU's played in, and that's what they've done. But they've got a big time battle on their hands this week. That's for sure.
It could wind up being similar to the Missouri game, where hey, you hang around if Jalen is really, really good. It's a 1-score game in the fourth quarter, and maybe Tech has a chance to add a score late type of deal. But it wouldn't surprise me if it plays out somewhat similarly. I think one of the difficult things about Tech is they've got so many different offensive weapons to spread the ball around to that I think they can kind of target and pick and choose a little bit. You mentioned the running game. Jacoby Williams, their running back, is a great pass catcher, really good in the passing game. And so that's another thing, too, is you're worried about Coy Eakin and the wide receivers, or you're worried about Terrence Carter at tight end. And then all of a sudden they hit the running back, and I think he had like a 60 or 70 yard catch and run against Utah. So like that's a tough deal too when you've got all those different guys that you can spread the ball around to.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big game. 6:30 p.m. Fox. The Lions gonna be interesting this week. The Lions have been moving a lot for KU. So this one opened at 11.5. Obviously not 14, like I said. So yeah, big week for KU. Any final thoughts, Kevin, before we get out of here?
No. I think for anybody that is sort of on the ledge after beating UCF, I would kindly ask that you step back a little bit, because like you said, Swain, any road win in the Big 12 is a good win. And so finding a way to make it happen when maybe you didn't play your A+ game throughout is actually an encouraging sign and not a discouraging sign. And so you're sitting in a spot now halfway through the season. I don't remember. Did you pick them to go? What did you pick for their record?
I said 8-4.
That's what I said. And you're 4-2. You're right on pace. That doesn't mean you're going to get to 8-4, but you get in as expected for the first part of the season. Obviously, you wish that you could have turned that Missouri game or that Cincinnati game into a win. Also, Missouri and Cincinnati are 9-1 between them. So, it's not necessarily the most awful thing in the world to drop close games to those teams. And so They in the second half of the season that you have 2 bye weeks, and a bye week cannot come for this Kansas team soon enough. It'll come after the Texas Tech game. I'll be really interested to see how they close this year out.
It's gonna be big. Backloaded schedule.
Yep.
Backloaded schedule. Now second half of the season, Tech, Utah, Iowa State, K-State. Like those are hard games. At Arizona, that's not going to be an easy game. So it's going to be a really challenging end of the year. And I think where KU improves coming out of that next bye week is going to be really, really important, right?
Yep.
Where are the areas that they can obviously get healthy, but like, do you see some progression in pass defense? Do you see some progression in the ability to maybe run the ball more consistently over the course of a game? KU improves in some of those things, all right, you feel pretty good about KU's ability to go and win multiple games, over the back half of the season. If these same issues, Kevin, that we talked about today and we talked about last week and we talked about after Missouri, if some of that stuff continues to show up, it's going to be a little bit more of a tougher road. But that's what makes the season fun. That's what makes the state of Kansas football, I think, really fun, where the fact that you're looking at these things and saying, hey, marginal improvement in certain areas means you go from being a 6-6 to an 8-4 type of team. Instead of your marginal improvement is 1-11, then all of a sudden you're 3-9. Like things have progressed. I think sometimes I lose sight of that, and you forget sometimes where things have been. And it's a credit, obviously, to KU for getting it better, but also with improvement comes improved expectations. And so that's what makes this stuff fun right now, Kevin. So yeah, should be an interesting week ahead. And Texas Tech, man, it's one of those games on the calendar you had circled going into the year. So it's going to be a really fascinating game. Obviously, make sure you're staying tuned to Fog.net. Make sure you stay tuned to the KC Sports Network and everything Kevin's doing over there. The Pay Heat Podcast, Verbal Commitment Podcast. You can get your fix on all sorts of high school recruiting stuff. You can get your fix on Kansas. If you want more Kansas podcast stuff, obviously check out all the great work Kevin is doing over there. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Fog.net podcast. We will talk to you all next Sunday after what will most likely be another very interesting Kansas football game. Hope everyone has a great week.